All right, everybody. We're here for episode 91 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. Hope you all enjoyed our last episode and our previous other 89 episodes before that. We are going to do something that we've done that's similar but a little different, and we're going to talk more about performances of a certain actor throughout his career instead of going down his entire IMDb page. But before that, Wayne, last week, we said we wouldn't talk about the Oscars anymore, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. But they did end up banning Will Smith for 10 years, which I personally think is a bit harsh. But what's your take on that? What's your take on the ban?
It's all just a dog and pony show at this point. I mean,
agree. I couldn't agree more. I think it's a perfect example of we didn't do anything at the moment, so we're going to overcompensate after the fact.
Well, if they're going to do that to Will Smith, then Weinstein needs to have all his awards stripped. And
yes, a lot of people have talked about that. Mel Gibson, even though I thought the movie was fantastic, but he was still allowed to show up years ago after all the stuff that he's done and said. And I get this happened live on stage at the Oscars, so that puts a little different of a scope on it, but it doesn't make what Will Smith did worse than what, Weinstein and Cosby and all these other people do. That it doesn't seem like a stand was really taken. Obviously, Weinstein was erased, but he still has his how many ever Oscars he won and all that kind of stuff. So,
I mean, regardless, it was a bitch move, but to do this, it's just like, oh, see, we're paying attention. We're taking a stand. It's like, all right, come on, let's just move along. And doing it now is just kind of dragging it out, in my opinion. Let's just
agree.
Move along. Everybody move on, get on with their lives.
When I think it's typical Oscars of like reading the room wrong, which they do all the time, and like, I look at it like when Green Book won Best Picture. It's like they read the room wrong. They thought that was going to be the movie that was going to be like, oh, we get it now. Racism bad. And it didn't work. And it's the same with this situation. It's like, oh, they want us to take a stand. And it's like, yeah, we did, but not like this kind of stand. Like it didn't have to be as aggressive. And it's just, it's kind of sad the way it's all going. And they obviously just never know what they have to do or are supposed to do.
Now, you know what's going to happen. Will Smith is going to give like the performance of a lifetime in the upcoming years. And there's going to be this big, oh my God, lift the ban.
Yeah.
And then Chris Rock is going to accept the award on his behalf because he's not going to be allowed to.
that would be hilarious.
In 7.5 years when this happens.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. It probably it'll happen at some point. Where it'll be a problem. I think a 1-year ban would have been fine, which basically banning him from giving out next year's Oscar, since that's usually the trend. The winner, shows up if they're available to give out the next year's Oscar. I think that would have been sufficient enough, and they didn't need to do this whole thing. But anyway, as I said, we are no longer going to talk about this. I just figured we needed to touch base on that because.
And another thing I feel about this. No.
And another thing. Nicolas Cage was robbed this year for Pig. I'm saying it, and it's the last time I'm going to say it. Probably not. I'm going to keep saying it until the day I die.
Licorice pizza.
All right. So this week in kind of I don't want to say like pay tribute because he's not dead. Bruce Willis is still very much alive.
But it's hilarious.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry.
Too soon. He, obviously we talked last week that he has the aphasia, so he is retiring from acting. But I figured just this kind of new little format we'll test out with him, talk about 4 movies of his that are different from each other and that kind of require different performances. We're going to start, I think, with one we've talked about before. I know we have, being that it's considered, one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time. I consider it the greatest action film of all time.
The greatest Christmas action film of all time.
Yes, we'll go with that.
And yes, I'm elaborating because it pisses Miranda off because she says it's not a Christmas movie. And she's wrong.
And that is, of course, 1988's Die Hard. It would introduce a different side of Bruce Willis to the world. Many people know, I think, from watching um, the behind the scenes on Netflix, the How It Got Made or whatever the hell it's called, the movies that made us. That
Mm-hmm.
they talked about how the producers and the company didn't want Bruce Willis because he was a comedic TV actor. He wasn't really a movie actor yet, and no one saw it working. They were thinking Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Jean Claude Van Damme, someone with all the muscles and the the ability to do
Russell?
quip. Yeah, the muscles from Brussels. Um, and Bruce Willis was just kind of an ordinary dude. He wasn't. He was in shape, but he wasn't like ridiculously muscular. He kind of became the anti-action star, I think, through this film. And what you get out of this performance, like yes, in Commando and in Cobra, you get one-liners from Stallone and Schwarzenegger, which are funny, but in the realm of the movie, they're supposed to be um like badass lines for the character to say. Like they become funny to us because we get to quote, they're endlessly quotable. But with like Bruce Willis, what you get in this movie is you get a lot of his humor shining through in like the moments where he's climbing through the vents, where he's talking to
Come out to the
all the bad
coast, lots
guys.
of drinks.
Yes, and then where he's talking with Carl Winslow. I'm drawing a blank on his name from Die Hard, even though I have it right here.
Reginald Val Johnson.
Reginald Vell Johnson, the actor, yes, phenomenal. Obviously, you get one of the greatest villains of all time in Alan Rickman. But the focus here, I mean, we've talked about how great Rickman was in this film. He was incredible. Bruce Willis, I think, surprised a lot of people because with this movie, he showed that he was charismatic. He showed that he could carry a film and make people care about the character. And I think uh, it kind of turned action films from what they were to something different, and where you kind of get, we had, I guess it's hard to say because we did have Beverly Hills Cop before this, we did have Lethal Weapon 1 before this, um, but just something about this felt different, and it ushered in a new era of action films, a lot of which Bruce Willis started. But there were plenty other films that followed, the Die Hard strategy of having a kind of a comedic lead man. There are plenty also that really just basically ripped it off. We reviewed one of those not too long back with the great Robert Davey and Andrew Dice Clay. Um, but so Wayne, when you think of Bruce Willis in this movie, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Hey, welcome to the party, pal. And of course, the Yippee-Ki-Yay line.
Yes.
But one of the things we talked about physique-wise, it's like he looked believable. He's a cop, and he's could pass for an everyday dude. Whereas the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers are just unbelievably ripped and just kind of like still badass to cheer for and watch. But it's like, I don't know. I
Well,
just gave it a sense of. I can't believe I'm going to say this. It gave it a sense of believability.
and it in a way though it does because like a good example is I've talked about, I listened to the How Did This Get Made podcast. I watched a movie called Stone Cold because of that, and because I wanted to hear them talk about it. Stone Cold is a 90s action film with Brian
What?
Bosworth.
What?
With
Sorry.
Brian Bosworth, the Boz, and the one comment they make is that how muscular he is, and like the fact that like when you take it in reality, how could this guy be a cop, because he'd have to work out about 8 hours a day just to keep that physique. So when you think about it, like when you have Schwarzenegger or Stallone play cops, you have to wonder, like, what do they do every day and also work an 8-hour shift as a police officer to keep that form that they have. Where you get someone like Bruce Willis, and like I said, yes, he's in shape, but he's not ridiculous. He's like a normal person, and I think that's what they were going for. Similar to something like a Lethal Weapon, where they had Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in an action comedy where neither one of them were ridiculously ripped. So I think they wanted to go in that kind of direction, And I think Lethal Weapon does deserve a lot of credit for how well Die Hard did. People don't realize that Lethal Weapon was a year earlier and kind of set
Mhm.
up the same format. But instead of having two people, they went down to one. And go
Does
ahead, Wayne.
this fall under the buddy cop movie? Just, I mean, it's kind of a stretch with Carl Winslow and
It,
Bruce, but
yeah, it has elements of it, but I think what sets this movie apart is that they remove it's basically Bruce Willis for the majority of the movie.
right.
So I think with something like Lethal Weapon, you have that the comedy is prevalent between those two main characters the whole time, and then with Beverly Hills Cop, while it's more Die Hard because it's a single main character, you do have those two comedic buddy cops that kind of come throughout the film with Judge Reinhold and the other guy. So I think this was just a little bit different of a setup, and it took the idea of like something like Commando, but put it into a Lethal Weapon style buddy cop tone, if that makes sense to anybody.
Yeah.
um, but I mean,
One of the things that always sticks out, sorry, jumping again,
sure.
just his interior monologue with himself.
Yes,
Like when he's trying to like, they call me, and then like they get the distress call that it's a false fire alarm. They're like, no, what do you want? What? He's
yeah,
yelling,
oh yeah, yeah,
open fire. It's like that just adds such a nuance to the film where it's like, anybody in his situation would probably be doing the same thing, only shitting themselves at the same time. So
yes. Well, and I think it opened up a new thing because usually those like little quips you would get from the hero to the villains, but like you said, in this case, it's like when he's crawling through the vent, he's like, come to the party, you'll have a few laughs," something like that.
hey,
Um,
come to the coast. We'll have a few drinks. We'll have a few laughs.
yes, the whole internal struggle that he kind of is on in himself, but also knowing that he has to be the hero at the same time, I think is
It
really
gives
really
a
makes the movie
sense of
work.
vulnerability and relatability to it for me.
Yep.
Just so I'm Bruce Willis's IMDb page right now, and in 1989 he played a character in the movie In Country named Emmett Smith.
Nice. He
What's up?
also played go up a little bit. It is another movie. What did he play? There's another character that he played that's the same name as a real person.
Well, in 1992 he played Bruce Willis.
Yes, he did. He did play Bruce Willis, and
In Striking Distance he played Tom Hardy.
that's what it was. I was like, and I like Striking Distance. It's a bad action movie, but it's fun. That's what it was. I was like, oh wait, that's right. His name's Tom Hardy in that. Um, Wonder if no, because Tom Hardy was born way before Striking Distance came out. I was like, I wonder if his parents were Striking Distance fans.
That would have been awesome.
That would be a terrible. Like,
Maybe
my
the writer
parents,
of Striking Distance was a Tom Hardy fan, or never
yeah,
mind.
maybe before he was famous. Can you just imagine being like, yeah, my parents saw Bruce Willis in The Color of Night, so that's where they got my name from. So, like, wait, what?
Stranger things have happened. So,
This is true.
like people who named their son Will Willis or
Yes. Oh god.
Williams, or,
Yeah, Will
Tom
Williams. Yeah.
Thompson,
Yeah. Oh my god. Tom
John
Johnson.
Johnson. It's like, really? Did your parents just hate you?
Yes. That's
That's coming from the guy who's named Wayne. Okay.
Hey, I'm Michael. Also, my dad's name is Michael, so not too creative. So
Junior.
this movie would catapult Bruce Willis to superstardom, basically, giving him the opportunity to choose kind of whatever movie he wanted, which is why I was going back and forth between the comedies and what we were going to talk about, but we're going to talk about Death Becomes Her, because for a guy to be on the upward ladder that he was, to go and then choose a weird dark horror comedy as one of his next vehicles following Die Hard, and he made it like in the last like 4 or 5 years after Die Hard. I think it's a very interesting choice. And while the movie itself, I don't think it was like a box office hit, it definitely has its fans, which I definitely count myself as one of those. My growing up in the 90s, we had pay-per-view. We had one of those, it was called the black box. And got all like the pay-per-view channels. So I saw, as the movies were coming out in the home video, I saw them pretty quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of those ones that just I saw probably like 10 to 15 times. Probably like a summer or something that I was inside watching movies. And it always stuck out to me. It's Robert Zemeckis, so it's got big star directing power behind it, written by Martin Donovan and David Coep, starring Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, Goldie Hawn, Isabella Rossellini. It's a very physical comedy film. It's a very dark comedy film. Bruce Willis plays a very nice scientist or surgeon or whatever he's supposed to be, who ends up in a relationship with Goldie Hawn, and then Meryl Streep's character falls down the stairs, but she has taken this potion where she comes back to life. And then Goldie Hawn also wants it deals with aging and Hollywood, and how people, and it still goes on today. People want to look their best, for the cameras, and there's a lot of internal struggle, I think, for people through this entire movie, in this weird, bizarre movie, where you have Bruce Willis's character who decides not to live forever. Because the only thing is they can live forever, but they have to continuously get plastic surgery, which is why they keep Bruce Willis around, which that's what he is. He's a plastic surgeon. That's right. And at a certain point, he draws the line.
I'm going through the IMDb page again. Sorry, not to completely
Go ahead.
There's an actor whose name is Clement von Frankenstein. He
An
plays
actor?
opening man.
That's amazing.
Clement von Frankenstein.
Yeah, Wayne, are you familiar with this movie?
I have not seen this in at least, I was going to say 20 years, but maybe it was 30 when it came out.
Yeah, it's been 30. It's a 30-year-old movie now.
It's been a long time. I can't really, as you were describing it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember that. I just remember Goldie Hawn having a big hole in her chest.
Yes, she gets, at some point she gets shot. She has a giant hole in her chest. The other memorable scenes are Meryl Streep when she falls down the stairs. She stands up and she has to straighten her neck out because it broke around, it went around.
Right.
The CGI is a bit wonky, but that's just because of the time, as the 90s. I think they were trying
1992. That was pretty good stuff, though.
Yeah, they did some pretty good effects. They had some pretty good actual non CGI effects, practical effects. I just watched this one recently. I do think it still holds up. It's a very good dark comedy. Bruce Willis is really good in this movie. Again, it shows his range of what he was able to accomplish, and it makes me wish that he did more horror films, horror comedy. We're going to talk about another horror film coming up here, but I just wish that he would have kind of done more in that area where he only seemed to explore it every so often.
While we're still on the topic of comedy, though, before we get into that,
sure.
I loved the Look Who's Talking movies, at least the first two.
Yes,
where he was the voice of Mikey, the child.
Yes.
So I remember watching this in the theaters way too early before I should have. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Especially the opening scene where the sperm are swimming through the where they're swimming through. I think the fallopian tube. What the hell is that? Oops.
Yeah, he. What was interesting, if you just looking at his filmography, he did everything. He did action films. He did Hudson Hawk, The Last Boy Scout. He made a cameo on Loaded Weapon 1. We talked about Striking Distance. He did North, Color of Night, which is an erotic thriller. He obviously kept doing the Die Hard movies, 12 Monkeys, Beavis and Butthead Do America. He did a voice, and so he just kept doing all these different type of roles. He never seemed to wanted to be typecast, which I think is interesting when you look at an actor like him, because I think most people would consider him an action star. But he really did a lot of
typecasted role of all time. Sorry, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
The most typecasted role of all time is when he saved the planet in Armageddon.
Yes, exactly. Which was a popular time. I remember when we see the movies. We're going to get to one of those movies then, but he had done a few movies in that time frame that it's the one where Bruce Willis dies in the end. So my buddy would use that line to me every once in a while, and then we would have to like, wait a minute, but which one? Which with Bruce Willis dying at the end? Um, Fifth Element's one of my favorites too. I thought about talking about that one,
Mhm.
but I think while like I said, his career never really stalled. We'll talk briefly about his more recent stuff, but
Even in
um,
1996 when he was in Last Man Standing with Tim Allen. Up, up.
wrong last man standing. Um, there's a western with Bruce Willis, so a western movie he did.
Mhm.
All right, Pulp Fiction in 1994 kind of uh, changed everything, if you will,
Yes.
in cinema. It was considered technically an indie film. It was made by produced by these powerhouse producer brothers who we no longer talk about. Um, Made by the director of Reservoir Dogs, his second feature film that he directed. He had written True Romance and Natural Born Killers as well, that were both released around the time of Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino, obviously, is what I'm talking about. And he had this movie, and he wanted to cast a bunch of famous people in a lot of these roles. Now, some of them were like Samuel L. Jackson. People knew who he was, but he hadn't had a role that really had him blow up yet. And then there was John Travolta, who had been famous and then kind of was in a downturn at this time in 1994.
Yep.
Uma Thurman was on the rise. You had Bruce Willis, who, again, like I said, Bruce Willis never stopped working. I don't think he ever really went away. That's why I think casting him in this was big, because he was a big star in 1994 still. They had the Planet Hollywood thing where it was him, Schwarzenegger, and Stallone that were like the part of this restaurant that was huge. So to get Bruce Willis in a movie that no one knew what it was going to do, how it was going to perform, what the long lasting effect of this movie was. And we talked about in our Oscar episode how like something like Goodfellas kind of paved the way for Pulp Fiction. And I think it allowed for these ultra violent films to kind of grab a majority audience, which is something that I think was really difficult to do for a long time, because they kind of kept, you'll go watch Hollywood movies from the 60s, the 70s, and even a lot of the 80s. They're not very violent. The violence is very hidden. And, something like Goodfellas comes out in 1990 and it's very in your face. And this was kind of a reaction to that, I think. And Tarantino obviously showed that he didn't mind violence with Reservoir Dogs and writing Natural Born Killers and True Romance. But this was just on another level. It had that the story where it went back. You had to pay attention because it starts at the end and then begins and then goes back to the beginning, and it's all kind of over the place. Um,
Yeah.
so you had to cast it perfectly, and I think casting Bruce Willis as Butch was something that I don't know that anybody saw happening at that moment. And to take a character like Bruce Willis and to throw him in that the scene with Veen Rames, which once I say that everybody should know what I'm talking about, in the bottom of the pawn shop, um, was a risk. It was a risk for Bruce Willis to take this role, I think. But I want to believe that he read the script and he saw something special in Quentin, and it's what kind of led, I think, to Bruce Willis being in more interesting movies. I'm assuming it led to him being more interested in something like 12 Monkeys, um,
Mhm.
and show that he could do the weird. That it's a little bit strange. It's a little, but it's definitely um, one of my top favorite movies. I think it's one of Tarantino's masterpieces, if you will. So Wayne, when you saw Pulp Fiction for the first time, what was your thought of the whole cast and Bruce Willis and everybody?
I finished it and I had to immediately restart it because it was just too confusing for let's see, it came out in 95, so I was 13. I probably didn't see it till I was probably 15 or 16.
Okay.
And I was on VHS and I watched it and I'm like, this fucking thing doesn't make any fucking sense. Why is he over here and then over here and then this guy's over here and there? It's like, then you rewatch it and you're really paying attention. It's like, okay, I get it. Being in my middle teens and not really having a laser focused mindset yet. It's like, what the hell? What? Let me ask you this: are you surprised that Bruce Willis wasn't nominated for this movie, where it went because obviously Sam Jackson for supporting actor, and I believe it was Travolta for leading actor.
Which is kind of silly because they're the same like freaking
Right.
role. Him and Sam
Both
Jackson.
guys did a great job, but it's kind of like, yeah,
I
I don't know.
think
That
I think Bruce Willis could have easily been nominated, and I almost look at him as the lead in this movie
that
over
where I was,
Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. Um, I think he definitely has the more heroic part. He's the good. I mean, again, he's the good guy of the film. Technically, when you look at all the characters, um, so it was perfect casting to cast someone like Bruce Willis, who at the like I said at the time was a big movie star. He was a guy people wanted to root for. So to have him in that role, I think was really perfect. And yeah, I do think this movie probably could have used more Academy Award nominations. All the performances were great. Uma was great.
yeah. It's just
Even
a shame that Forrest Gump was also this year. So
yeah, there were all, and then as we went through our
and
Oscar episodes, there was
Shawshank, wow, frick.
and Shawshank really got screwed over too. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's one of those movies that we talked about. Sometimes the Oscars get it wrong. Yes, people do like Forrest Gump still, but I don't really hear people talking about Forrest Gump as much as I hear people talking about Pulp Fiction or Shawshank Redemption. I mean, Shawshank Redemption has gone on to be one of the top 20 films of all time to most people. So
Yeah.
the fact that it didn't win Best Picture just kind of boggles the mind. like,
Well,
and
I
Pulp
think
Fiction, I think
Forrest Gump right up there with Shawshank. So I guess I'm in the minority, if you will.
okay, no, that's
At the nominees, and Morgan Freeman was up for leading actor instead of
Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins. It's like, how?
Yeah,
What in the actual F?
was Travolta nominated
Yes, for actor.
for lead actor? See, that's interesting. But that I think again that had to do with the comeback scenario. When that movie came out, it was sold as like, oh my god, Bruce Willis and John Travolta are in the same fucking movie. This is going to be amazing and epic, and it's going to be a great action film. When in reality, it's a lot more than that. And Bruce Willis and John Travolta are barely on screen together. And when they are, Bruce Willis kills John Travolta. So it's very minor.
It's like, how do you put him as the lead actor? But anyway, because
He does
anyway,
he does open and end the film, I guess. But it was just a weird. I think, like I said, I think a lot of it had to do with the buzz around him in that movie.
I got your Royale with cheese right here.
Yeah. Well,
Again,
it was
the Oscars from '95, and Tim Robbins isn't even nominated. Which
that was kind of ridiculous.
But I'm going to stop talking about that because we're talking about Bruce Willis right now.
Yes.
Bringing it on.
Who should have also been nominated? I do agree. I think he should have been. I think the way this movie was, like I said, it was, if I remember correctly, it was promoted as like just any other generic action film, which it is not. And it's something different. It's something I think we hadn't really seen before, as in American audiences, because I know a lot of people, film fans, are going to be like, "Oh, but he stole from this movie and that movie that was made in Japan in 1972." Not everybody saw those movies, guys.
Well, let's break down every movie ever made then. So
yeah, right, exactly. So this
is that excuse.
It's film nerds, man. We get pretty heated about this shit sometimes. Tarantino just basically changed, in my opinion, changed cinema and put us on a different trajectory. And it was nice that Bruce Willis was along for the ride. I think it is one of his best performances. It's a great flick when he comes into the movie, probably partway through, and that's another reason maybe they're all supporting actors, but that's the problem, right? You can't. It's hard to then, because then you're going to limit who gets nominated if you throw them in all the supporting category. But it really is one of those movies that is, like when you talk about '90s film, it's at the top. Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption. Those are three of the movies that people still talk about to this day. And it's for a reason. It's just one of those films that kind of transcends any decade, really. If you think about it. So, all right. And then lastly, it's horror, but it's drama. So again, showing that he can do pretty much anything. Bruce Willis in 1999, one of my wife's favorite movies, The Sixth Sense, directed by M. Night
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, which I've said a million fucking times and can't believe I didn't get correct there. Sorry, M. Night. Produced by Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy, Barry Mendel, starring Bruce Willis, Toni Collette, Olivia Williams, Haley Joel Osment. There were definitely some Academy Award nominees out of this film. Let's see if I could find the accolades section here. A lot of it was Haley Joel Osment, who was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. I believe, let's see, Academy Award nomination, Best Picture, writing, Best Director, Best Editing, Best Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actor. So Bruce Willis was not nominated for this. He probably should have been. I'm not sure who else was in '99. I think that was the American Beauty year, I believe. So that kind of Kevin Spacey was the front, even though we don't talk about him anymore. He was the front runner that year. Even though a lot of people felt that Russell Crowe should have won for The Insider.
We keep saying we don't talk about that anymore. And how many times did Bruce Willis play a character named Bruno? We don't talk about Bruno.
This is true. That's his stage name, isn't it?
Yes. And his band and whatnot.
Exactly. When I say stage name, I don't mean his acting stage name. I mean his band name, Bruno.
His After Dark stage name.
Yes. He was in Pulp Friction.
Now I am again continually shocked. Like, I know you said it's the American Beauty year, but for best writing and best screenplay, like, come on, really? I don't know. I guess
for American Beauty, you're talking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like that screenplay anymore. As a teenager, I always liked that movie, but I have not watched it in a long time. I consider it one of my favorite movies, but I'm scared to watch American Beauty again because I've heard of how badly it's aged. Anyway, back to The Sixth Sense. So you get a young Haley Joel Osment who had been in a few things, but this was kind of like what launched him into.
I got to stop you right there real quick again. I'm sorry. But for best screenplay, it went to Shakespeare in Love. Get out of here with that.
So that was the Shakespeare in Love year. So that year. Oh no, look at the 2000 Oscars.
Oh, my bad. Hang on.
Yeah, 99 because it's the 99 Oscars were the 98. So that was the year Saving Private Ryan should have won. But if you look at 99,
Whiter House Rules. Really?
I like that movie, but that's a perfect example of something like Coda. Like, it's a good movie, but no one fucking remembers Cider House Rules. Like, it literally has not lived on in anyone's memory.
I don't need Spider-Man running around playing doctor. Okay, sorry.
Hey, Michael Caine was phenomenal in that movie. So that I remember that when he won, because Tom Cruise was nominated that year too for Magnolia. He made the comment like apologizing to the other actors, Haley Joel and Tom Cruise, and saying like, "Yeah, you don't want to win because your career is going to go downhill from here." So that was his reason why it was okay that they didn't win. But Toni Collette was incredible in this movie. I'm glad she got nominated when she did because she really was phenomenal as the mother. This movie is, I mean, everyone at this point knows the twist. Bruce Willis gets shot in the beginning of the movie by Donnie Wahlberg, very skinny Donnie Wahlberg. And then you find out as the movie goes on, he's treating this kid who you find out could see dead people. That's the whole premise of the movie. I could see dead people. Well, at some point, you find out in the movie that Bruce Willis's character has actually been dead the whole time. And they go back and they show you his fiancée, Olivia Williams, and how it looked like they were having dinner together, but really she was having dinner by herself and kind of talking to him like out loud because she was still traumatized from what had happened. So there's these moments throughout that you go back and you see that while he was there, he wasn't physically there. And it at the time, it was a huge real, even though I have to get my buddy Jason, if you're listening to this, you're a dick. We're watching this movie, Wayne, in theaters, and he nudges me like halfway through. He's like, Bruce Willis is dead. I'm like, what? We get like to the big reveal, and I was like, son of a bitch. So he figured it out way early and ruined it for me. So thank you, Jason. You're a dick. It's still a great movie though.
This film until like maybe 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
The hype. I mean, it was great. It was good. Really, really good. By far, M. Night Shyamalan's best work, in my opinion. But
yes, he started at the top. That's for sure.
Yeah, I got your fucking killer trees right here. But yeah, no. Haley was fantastic.
Yeah.
Everything you've already said is, I agree with 100%. And I did not figure it out until the reveal.
And you didn't know, right?
I mean, I knew that Bruce Willis was dead at the end of Sixth Sense because of that fucking, what is it, Bloodhound Gang song?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Lonely Island.
Lonely Island, yes. The classic jizz in my pants. I forgot that they revealed that if you hadn't seen the movie. There are still moments in this movie that, because my wife loves watching this movie, so I've kind of like lessened on my love for this movie just because she watches it so much. But the scene in the kitchen where he thinks he hears his mother after he's going to the bathroom, and it's a ghost, and she's got her wrist slit, and she screams really loud at him, still terrifies me. And then there's a scene where he walked into his school, and it must have been like a school like during like the Civil War in the South or something, like, because he walks past and there's a bunch of black people hanging, staring at him. Still, like, just now talking about it gives me fucking chills. Yeah. Like, it's just. And then and the reveal to the mom too, when they're stuck in traffic, and he's like, someone just died, and she's like, why? How do you know that? Because she's standing next to my window. And then, like, he goes into the story about her mom, and you can tell that she starts to get the chills. And, grandma always wished that she was there, or grandma was there to see your recital, even though you didn't know she was there. All that stuff like that. The drama portions of this film work so well, and that's what makes this movie work. It's not necessarily the horror elements. It's the fact that they nailed all the dramatic performances and the dramatic elements of this film. It's still a classic. I mean, it's one of, I think, Bruce Willis's best performances, one of his best movies. I still remember when this came out. This is one of my movie brain. When it came out in the Daily Herald, I don't know if it was Dan Geyer specifically. He's the movie guy at the Daily Herald in Illinois, but it was given like 1 star out of 4. And I was like, wait, what? And then when it started getting all this Oscar hype, because it came out at a weird time too. It was not Oscar season. It came out like in the summer, I think. And so when it started getting all this Oscar hype, they released a review of it. And I think this time it definitely was Dan Geyer, and he gave it 3 out of 4 stars. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, but I saw a 1-star review in this paper earlier in the year. So I was really confused on what was going on. I still don't know. The only thing I can think of is because they had more than one reviewer working for the paper. So maybe that was one person's point of view. Because nowadays, if you follow like JoeBlow.com, you'll see like, we give it 4 out of 5 stars, and then they'll release another review a week later. Like, this is John's point of view from the movie and stuff. So go ahead, wait, it looks like you're saying
we're dating ourselves with talking about reading the newspaper.
I know. Right now,
we had movie times in the Chicago Tribune.
So, kids, before the internet was as prevalent as it is today, we would have to read our movie reviews in the newspaper. So every week, I would get the timeout section of the Daily Herald that my parents would get. I would open it up on Friday, and that's where they had all the new movies, and they would have all the reviews of all the new movies. And that's where I got my, okay, this one might be pretty good, or this one sucks, or we're not going to go see that. Because I used to go to the movies every weekend. So no matter what was playing, me and my buddy were going to see, me and Jason, Life Runner, we're going to go see... we're going to go see whatever it was. I still remember, him and I taking his girlfriend at the time to go see No Evil with Kane from WWE, which is just like a really gross B-movie slasher. And she's like, what are we going to see? We're like, oh, it's just this like new horror movie. It's all right. Like, you'll like it, I think.
I remember the first time I went to a marathon movie day by myself. I saw Van Wilder and then Death to Smoochie.
Nice.
What a combo!
That's a good twofer right there. Two very kind of obscure comedies because neither one of them were like super popular, but I feel like both of them have a very sizable cult following at this point. All right, so as we reminisce about our movie history, we'll end this Bruce Willis segment with just saying that we were a bit harsh on him and later in the last couple of years only because it seemed like he was just kind of taking movies to take movies, which he was, but he was doing it because he knew that this was most likely an inevitable conclusion at some point that he was going to have to retire.
My favorite thing, and respect given Bruce Willis, is that he'll just pop up anywhere. Like he had that stint on Friends.
Yep.
I think he did an episode on that '70s show, if I remember correctly, toward the end there.
He seemed to always be game to do basically anything. One of my favorite cameos of his is in Loaded Weapon 1, which is a spoof of Lethal Weapon. They're shooting up trailer, so Emilio Estevez's character is the version of Mel Gibson from Lethal Weapon. And they're shooting up trailers in the beach. And instead of in Lethal Weapon, that's where Mel Gibson's trailer gets blown up. Instead, they shoot up Bruce Willis's trailer, and he comes out and they're like, "Wait, isn't this 275 Downer Street?" He's like, "No, this is 274. 275's over there." And he's like, his whole trailer is exploded. He's got like a T-shirt stuck to a stick as like a white flag. He's like, "Oh," and then it's Tim Curry. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." He's like, "It's all right." Like they just fly on by. One of the greatest cameos. Obviously, it was a callback to Die Hard because he had that like the white tank top on. Great cameo though. Go ahead, Wayne.
Oh, that's yeah. We're never gonna get another Die Hard movie.
Sadly. Yeah, that my buddy. When him and I were texting back and forth about this. That's the one thing he said. It sucks that we'll never get another Die Hard, especially because
the last one was so poorly made.
And he was gonna do another one, so I'll be interested to see if they actually continue because originally there was a talk of doing a prequel where you would then have like Bruce Willis basically be like a narrator, but obviously you can't have that anymore. So I'll be interested to see if that series continues. I would be fine, even though I know people didn't like the movie, but the dude that played his son is not a bad actor. What's his name? I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's from the Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad.
Australian actor. What's his name?
Yeah,
the guy with the face, with the
face and the name and the hair. He wears shirts sometimes.
Pulling it up right now. Survey says, it's my buddy who doesn't say his name correctly, Jai Courtney.
Jai Courtney, yes. I believe it's pronounced Jay Courtney, Wayne.
Yeah, I don't speak the English. There's an I, not a Y. Thank you very much. I don't know my phonetics. That's right. Phonetics, folks. That's right. You don't think I know a word that big.
He should know how to say his own name, right? That's all you're saying.
I think I know better than him, okay?
Yes. I think you do too. All right. So, all respect to Bruce Willis. He gave a lot of great and fun performances over his career. This will be something. The reason I wanted to break it up like this too is that we could always come back and do a part 2 and talk about 3 or 4 other films of his. We can do this with other actors. Trust me, my plan is to do this with Nick Cage. We'll pick 3 or 4 of his movies and go into it in the different versions of Nick Cage because there are several. But we are. Again, we respect the hell out of Bruce Willis, and we'll continue to enjoy his films. I still watch Die Hard probably once a month, just put it on in the background and stuff. So, all right. So we are moving on to our reviews
of the week.
This week, I would say we got some pretty good ones. Yeah. I enjoyed both of them. We'll do the drama first. So this is a spy thriller. It was directed by Janos Metz Pedersen, or Peterson, probably. Huh?
Yeah, him too.
Him too. Written by Olin. What?
Giannis.
Oh, probably Giannis. You're right. Whatever. Who cares?
All right. Let me just spell it out for you phonetically again. Jan Us.
Olin Steinhauer wrote the book and the screenplay. Produced by Mark Gordon. I believe Chris Pine was also a producer. He stars in it. Tandy Newton, Lawrence Fishburne, Jonathan Pryce also in this film. So the plot of it's called All the Old Knives. If I didn't mention that, I don't remember. Takes place in early 2020. We flash back to 2012, I believe it is, because it's 8 years, I think, or maybe 2012. There was a terrorist attack where everybody ended up dead, and this is about the team that was at the CIA office when it happened, and that's Chris Pine, Tandy Newton, who are the love interest with each other. Lawrence Fishburne is their boss. Jonathan Pryce is Tandy Newton's boss, and so what happens is we come to 2020 where Chris Pine's character still works for the CIA. He's been tasked with basically putting this thing to bed. One of the terrorists that they assumed was a part of it has now been captured, and he was killed in the capture attempt. Mm-hmm. And they want Chris Pine to go around and finish investigating this. We're not going to spoil anything, people, so don't worry. He then ends up having to go and do an interview with his ex-girlfriend, played by Tandy Newton, and things get pretty intense. It's not an action film. When I say spy film, it's like a slow spy burner, basically.
The level of complexity I appreciated very much, because you think it's be like, all right, one of them's a traitor, blah, blah, blah. Maybe, that's how spy movies usually go. It's like, huh. And I'm trying to be purposely being as vague as possible, because it is something you need to watch and pay attention to, because I found myself kind of drifting at times, like, wait, hold on, rewind, back it up.
I did, there were a couple times I had to go back. I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something there? There's a lot of layers to it, which I appreciate for these type of movies. It reminded me of something like Bridges of Spies with Tom Hanks. Huh?
Bridges of Madison County.
Yes, reminded me of Bridges of Madison County. Clint Eastwood is not in it, but neither is Meryl Streep. It is one of those movies that it's not going to be for everybody for sure, because there's not a lot of action going on. It's a very talky film, if you will. But I think there's enough here to hold your gaze for an hour and 40 minutes. It's not super long. Which some of these spy thrillers can be. I think this one does a good job of kind of getting to the point. It's very cool to see how things kind of unravel. We're given little pieces of information that we're not sure how important they are until later. I thought Chris Pine did a really good job. I think he's really good in these type of roles. They just never seem to be like big box office hits, which is probably why this one went straight to streaming. But I like that he takes these chances. Go ahead, Wayne.
It's crazy that how much facial hair ages Chris Pine, because when they do the flashbacks when he's clean shaven or clean shaven-ish, it's like, oh gosh, okay, and then wow, yes. Well,
and mine too. So my wife had brought that up. She's like, because she finds him attractive because he's Captain Kirk. So she's like, oh, he doesn't look like that now with the gray. I'm like, yeah, he does. Like, if he doesn't dye his hair, he looks not maybe as gray, but pretty gray. So I found some photos and showed her, and it didn't matter. She still thought he was incredibly attractive. I think she thinks he's getting hotter. So thanks, Chris Pine, for that. I did
have to interject with that. Handsome man. He's only he's 3 years older than you, 2 years older than me, but looks significantly older with the gray facial hair.
He does, he does.
Like he was in his 50s, like
he did.
Wow, that's incredibly petty there, because I mean, like I said, incredibly talented, attractive man. It's just the facial hair is like aged him. Like, all right.
For sure. it definitely makes him look a little older, but I'd say more distinguished, if you will.
I could stare into those baby blues for days.
Yes, get lost in those eyes. Ladies, he does show his ass like 3 times, so there is that. If you're into that,
was it his ass though, or did he use an ass double?
I think it was his. I can't be sure.
I've only seen had some pretty heavy scenes there. It's like,
yes, there is. Yeah, this is definitely not for young children. Why they would be interested in a spy thriller, I don't know. But there is definitely some nudity and some sex in this film. So expect that when you do watch it. It is available on Amazon Prime. I think the performances are really nice here. I think Chris Pine and Tandy Newton really hold it together. They're really kind of the cusp of the film, where everybody else is very much a supporting character. I liked it. I don't know that I'd watch it again, but I did enjoy it. I would say 6.5, 7 out of 10. Wayne, is that about right? What you're thinking?
The rewatchability of this, you need to be in the mood. Like,
yes, for sure.
It needs to be like a rainy day, and you've got maybe you just open a bottle of Pinot.
I think, but make sure you check the glass. Anyway. Oh, is that a spoiler? Is it not a spoiler?
Everybody knows I'm going straight from the bottle, so yes. It is what it is. And by bottle, I mean the cardboard adult juice box with the straw down there.
Exactly. It definitely, if I was going to do like a modern spy marathon, I think I would definitely throw this one in there along with Bridges of Spies. It has that same feel to it. And I really like spy noir thrillers. Go ahead.
Because we're not, when we say that, and don't think James Bond, because that's not what you're getting. Yes. So don't temper your expectations.
I think that's the problem, is when people hear spy, they hear James Bond, and then they think action film, or Ethan Hunt, and they think action film, and it's like, that's not, while those movies are great, that's not what this is.
I don't like that guy after what he did to Uma Thurman.
Yes. All right. So let's see here. We are going to go to our next one, which I think, and Wayne already posted about the movie. I saw, which I know that means that he really liked it. I had a lot of fun with this one. So,
man, what the hell Harry Potter doing playing the damn drums?
Harry Potter. That is Bill from It, sir. I didn't even
realize chasing monsters without his wand.
Yes. I didn't even realize that was him until I'm like, I know that actor. And then after the movie, I looked it up. I was like, oh yeah, that's how I know that actor. All right. So we have a brand new movie for Netflix called Metal Lords. It was written by D.B. Weiss, who is one of the creators of Game of Thrones. Him and his buddy produced this movie. It's directed by Peter Solat. It also was music produced by Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine, who has a tiny bit of cameo in it, which I thought was amazing. But stars Jaden Martell, Adrian Greensmith, Isis Hainsworth. It is called Metal Lords. So the first thing I had when I put this movie on Friday, I'm like, I still got 2 movies to watch, babe. So we gotta watch this one. And the heavy metal music starts. She's like, is this movie about metal music? I don't like metal music. Why don't we put on the other one? 20 minutes later into the Chris Pine movie, she was asleep. So I was like, I could have watched this movie. But I really, so Metal Lords is a coming of age story about these 2 metalheads. Well, one metalhead who then kind of like converts his friend into his best friend Kevin into being a metalhead. I liked the combination of these characters in this film. I thought they all worked really well together. It's basically kind of a battle of the bands, kind of think like School of Rock style high school band movie. I mean, except the kids are the main stars. The parents really kind of take a back seat, with the exception of Brett Gelman, and then the principal at the school. She's in it quite a bit. But you really don't see a lot of adults in this movie. Also, the great Joe Manganiello has a great cameo at the end as a former rock musician, which I thought was a very clever way to get that kind of character into this movie. So we follow the journey of Kevin and Hunter, and also Emily. Emily has issues. She takes medication for her issues. When she stops taking them, she has outbursts. We are introduced to Emily.
Outbursts or fits of murderous rage also fit.
Yes, both are true. She cusses out her band teacher, throws the flute so it sticks into the ground, and then calls him a cunt. And then he goes, because she's
that word here in America.
She's British, so the band teacher, you can't say that in America. Yeah, it a great like opening sequence really to kind of meet these three characters. Uh, it it's one of those movies that I like. I don't listen to heavy metal music. I think most people that know me know that. I listen to some harder rock music, but not usually heavy metal. Every time I watch a movie like this, though, Wayne, I always want to listen to heavy metal, and then I'll usually go and try, and then I'm like, no, no, not for me. But in the movie form, it works.
To my brother Chris and our dear friend Kevin are big metalheads, and I immediately was thinking of them the whole time, actually placing them in these two character
Yes.
roles, and I'm just like, because like I appreciate it and I respect it, but I just I'm not metal.
Yeah, I'm never have been. I probably never will be, but I admire them for it. And every time, like I said, I watch one of these movies, I'm always like, wow, this is cool. Um,
I
and
will say that what the cameos that I hinted at, I had to actually look up who all of them were because I wasn't sure.
the
I knew who
only
most of them were, but I was like, well,
the only one I didn't know was the guy from Judas Priest. The other three, I like, and I
you mean
didn't
the guy
remember.
from Chris? Oh, thank you from Judas Priest.
Huh? Yeah, yeah. Which he what obviously once he said it, then I knew. But at
Yeah,
the first time that you see him, you don't know where he's from. And then I knew the guy. One guy was from Metallica, but I couldn't remember his name. But
right.
then I knew who Scott Ian was, and I knew obviously Tom Morello because Rage and I like Rage. Um, it was it's a really fun coming of age story. You know, it follows a lot of the same beats where they're best friends, and then there's something that pulls them apart, and then they have to get back together, and the girlfriend is kind of crazy. So but they handle that well. They handle the mental illness aspect of her well, I think, where
Yeah,
they don't ever um blame her for her issue, which I think is positive because as Wayne and I can attest to parents that have kids that have special needs, a lot of the times that the help you get from the schools is I don't think they should go here anymore. Or,
yeah,
can you just tell them to not do that? Like, okay. So I think they handled that stuff really well. I was a little worried about it because at first, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, well, she's just going to be like this girl that speaks her mind. But then you start to realize that she has this mental illness. And then I start worrying, like, okay, well, are they going to handle this correctly? And I
yeah,
think they do. I think they do a good job of showing like what not being on medication can do to you. And I think um, there's a good point where she tries to substitute her boyfriend for the medication. And
yeah,
immediately as that happened, I'm like, well, that's not going to work out well. And then, of course, what happens is she has not caused by her, but someone agitates her to a certain degree. And she has a moment. But they do a good job of not, the person that caused the moment is the one who gets in
yes.
trouble and gets the talking
She's
to.
being chastised for it. It's they see the root
Yes.
cause.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, your buddy's a dick. That one girl that came out of the room. Yeah. It was It's I really liked this movie a lot, Wayne. I had a lot of fun with it. The music is great. I did look up so the actors did not play the music in the film, but
Mhm.
Tom Morello felt it was important that they knew how to play the music in the film. So he taught them and trained them on how to actually hold the instruments correctly,
Yeah,
perform the moves. He's like, but it's one thing to know how to look like you know how to play metal. It's another entirely different thing to actually play metal music. So he,
it was convincible. I was
yeah,
they might actually be playing this. All right, cool.
I had to
So
look. The fact that I had to look it up, yeah, and the reason he wanted it to be convincing was because I think you just made up a word, convincible. Um, I could be wrong.
that's what I do.
um, he wanted it to be convincing because he said that he's seen so many videos of him where he's playing the guitar. I can't remember if he's bass or guitar, but he's like, I totally am not hitting the notes that I'm supposed to be hitting. So he wanted it
Right.
to make it um, believable. And I think they did a really good job, especially Jaden Martell on the drums, because that's got to be really difficult to make that look real and not actually be playing. Where
Yeah.
I feel like guitar, yes, the guitar, is tough, but I feel like making drums look real while not playing is probably harder. Just my opinion. But yeah, all three leads were really good. I was pleasantly surprised by the two other performers who I did not know before this. Jaden Martell's from Stephen King's It and several other films. But the other two, I believe, are relatively new. But it's one of those movies. I just really had a good time with it. I mean, very entertaining, quick watch. If you like metal, to all our friends that like metal music, watch this movie because you'll probably feel like, oh shit, this is how it was when I was in high school. And especially if you had like a metal band, definitely watch this movie. A lot of fun. I would say 7.5, 8 out of 10, Wayne. I really like this movie and want people to go watch this film.
100% agree.
All right. So for my next thing, I watched for my next actor old film of the week, whatever the hell I'm calling it. I watched another Errol Flynn film, not Errol Morris, called Adventures of Don Juan. This is one I was on my radar once I looked up Errol Flynn. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I really like this movie. It's very funny, very comedic. Obviously, the issue is that everyone's supposed to be Spanish in this film, and they are not. But it was made in 1948, so you kind of have to expect that and get past it rather quickly. He must not have been able to do a convincing accent, or they didn't want him not to sound like himself, so he does not do one, but other actors in the movie do have accents. Don Juan, everyone I think at this point knows the story of Don Juan. Maybe not everybody, but he's a ladies' man. Everybody loves him whenever he shows up in the room, and he then ends up falling for the queen, and he obviously has to kind of wrestle with that, and he tries to out people that are bad within the king and queen's circle. It's a really entertaining film. It's, if you like sword fighting movies, that's what Errol Flynn did, and that's basically what this is a good representation of. He's really good with the sword, and it's a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen it, you have to rent it or buy it, but it's $2 to rent or $5 to buy. So it's well worth the fee, I think, if you haven't seen it before. Wayne, anything you'd like to talk about that you watched this week?
Well, because we were talking about Richard Linklater last week, I tumbled down the rabbit hole where I obviously revisited Dazed and Confused because that's what I do way too often. I also finally saw the baseball one that I'm completely blanking on.
Everybody Wants Some?
Everybody Wants Some, which is also fantastic.
Yes, very good.
Quite the level of Dazed, but it's really close.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want. Yeah. And then visited School of Rock again.
Nice. That's one I want to rewatch, especially after watching Metal Lords. I'm like, I got to watch School of Rock again.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Linklater just hits different for me. And I'm sure you're right there with me. So that, watch those. Making my way through Walking Dead still. I'm almost to season 7 where it really starts to drop off and the Negan stuff comes in. So I'm not really looking forward to progressing through it, but I'm going to push through. But I've also decided that I'm going to watch some Bruce Willis when we're done here today. Nice. I've already got Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense queued up. So
nice. Great choices.
And of course, if I have it in me, I'm going to put on Armageddon afterwards.
But, of course. You have to. You have to see him save the world. I mean, everyone has to have that moment.
I just want to hear 5 things from you. That was 7 words.
It's actually 10 things. More like 10 things. All right. So I also watched The Rental and the Block Island Sound 2 horror films that I liked, both on Netflix right now. I think Block Island Sound is actually a Netflix original. The Rental is not, so I don't know how long it'll be there. Get over there and watch it. It's a slow burn slasher directed by Dave Franco, so brother of James. Yeah, we don't talk about him anymore either. Stone Cold is a movie I just watched because of I talked about it earlier in the podcast about I listened to How Did This Get Made, and they were like, you need to watch this movie before you listen to this podcast. So I went and I watched it. I found it on YouTube for free, the entire film for free on YouTube. And they are correct. It is, if you would have put like Patrick Swayze or Nick Cage from 1991 in this film, we would be talking about Stone Cold and how great of a classic it was from 1991. Lance Henriksen is a great villain in this. It is one where basically the villains win. So I'll let people watch it to kind of figure out how that happens. But the hero is still the hero, but the villains do kind of end up completing their task. William Forsythe also plays the villain known as Ice. He's really good. Him and Henriksen play really well together. And while Bosworth is not great, he's not terrible. He does a good enough performance to get through the movie where it's believable. But it's a fun movie from '91 that I never saw. I take that back. I think I saw it, but I don't remember it enough to say that for sure. So I wanted to rewatch it. Photocopier, Rebecca and I watched it. Was one she picked. She always gets mad at the movies I pick. She's like, "Oh, this sucks." So I had her pick one out. I'm like, "Yeah, this ain't gonna be any good." It was actually pretty good. It of course was a drama though about sexual assault, which I don't know that she knew. I did not know that. I thought it was a horror film, but it is actually really good. It's Indonesian, so there are subtitles, but it's well worth your time. It's on Netflix. It's called Photocopier. Definitely check that one out, but be prepared to kind of be sad and a little depressed, but also it has an uplifting ending to a certain extent. um, and then on Friday, Donovan and I went and saw Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So him and I just 2 years ago went and saw Sonic the Hedgehog 1 right before the pandemic hit. It was one of our last movies we saw in theaters before the pandemic, so it's fitting that it's our third one that him and I have actually been in the theaters for. I took him to drive through a couple times last year, but we liked it. I don't know if you haven't watched these Sonic movies, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. They're really good. They're really entertaining. Jim Carrey is really funny in these roles, in the role as Mr. Robotnik. Idris Elba really adds to this movie as the voice of Knuckles. Also, and you're going to hate this, Wayne, this franchise does so much of a better job of setting up their next sequels than DC. Any DC movie that has had to set up for a sequel has been terrible. This does such a good job. Like, and it's just like one scene, and like in the original Sonic movie, it was Tails coming through, and everyone got pumped because oh my god, Tails is going to be in the sequel. And this one, I won't say who it is, but there's another character that's revealed in a scene in the credits in this one, and the whole theater was like, oh my god! And it's like it's a perfect setup. There doesn't need to be like a whole lot of stuff going. It's just like one quick scene where they talk about it, and you're like, oh my god, this is going to be awesome. Just really, really fun series. Hope they keep making them. I know that Jim Carrey may retire, but they do kind of set up to cover that if he does a little bit at the end. That's not really spoiling anything. You'll see what I'm talking about if you see the movie. But yeah, well worth it. Go check it out in theaters if you feel safe. If not, it'll probably be on Paramount Plus within a month or two. So you could also wait for that to happen as well. That's it. That's all I've seen this week. So let's go into news and notes. News this week: Shotgun Wedding with J-Lo and Josh Duhamel, bought by Amazon, will now most likely get a limited theatrical run and stream at the same time. Harrison Ford joins Jason Segel in Shrinking, an Apple Plus TV show from the Ted Lasso team. Squid Game director Hwang Dong-hyuk will adapt novel Killing Old People Club into a feature film. It will most likely be his next project after Squid Game Season 2. FKA Twigs to star alongside Bill Skarsgård in The Crow as Eric Draven's fiance. Downey Jr. producing 2 Sherlock Holmes series for HBO Max. What Josiah Saw, starring Nick Stahl and Robert Patrick, acquired by Shudder. Nancy Meyers writing, producing, and directing a new feature film for Netflix. Orphan Black Echoes coming to AMC Plus in 2023. It's a spin-off series of Orphan Black. Straight Man midlife crisis series being developed for Bob Odenkirk at AMC post Better Call Saul. So Better Call Saul's in its final season. Him and Giancarlo Esposito have shows set up at AMC already. So obviously AMC not ready to give up on those 2 actors. Lock and Key to end with its upcoming season 3 at Netflix was always the plan, according to the creators. Warner Brothers puts all Ezra Miller films on pause after arrest. He was again arrested for assaulting just a random person. He got really drunk and hit somebody. This is not the first time he's done that. Don't know if the Flash movie is even done yet, so I'm not sure what this is going to mean for his films. Movie wise, obviously he needs, the actor himself needs some help. So hopefully he gets the help that he needs, and that Hollywood should probably stop working with him until he does, because he seems to kind of just be a nuisance at the moment. Kevin Smith horror anthology Kilroy Was Here will only be available as an NFT that fans must purchase. I love Kevin Smith. It's a dumb fucking idea. Also tells me that the movie's probably not very good. Ending things with Anthony Mackie and Priyanka Chopra bought by Amazon Studios. Rob Lowe and his son John Owen Lowe will star in Netflix comedy series where they will play father and son. Severance renewed for second season over at Apple TV. I've yet to watch the first season, but it just wrapped up. I hear it's incredible, so I'm looking forward to watching Severance. Jeffrey Dean Morgan will star in an evil ventriloquist doll film called Felix with Benjamin Evan Ainsworth. From the Haunting of Bly Manor as his co-star. Joe Carnahan will produce the film, while John Cusack will direct. Snowfall renewed for sixth and final season. Annabeth Gish and Keith David join Ozzy Butterfield and Natalia Dyer from Stranger Things in the horror film All Fun and Games. Mark Malloy is going to be directing Beverly Hills Cop 4 for Netflix. Whoopi Goldberg joins Neil Gaiman's Anansi Boys at Amazon. Hedrick Hansen directing Outside adaptation produced by Ridley Scott. The book comes out at the end of June. John Cena to star in Officer Exchange film, which just sold to Amazon Studios. Lucasfilms cast trans actress Talisa Garcia in Willow TV series. It is a first for the company. Carrie Ells and Corey Stoll join Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon over at Netflix. Release is coming up. A play version of Miyazaki's Spirited Away to hit Hulu with two different performances, one on July 3rd and one on July 4th. The Valet film with Samara Weaving, Eugenio Derbez, and Max Greenfield hits Hulu May 20th. The Lincoln Lawyer new series hits Netflix May 13th, starring Manuel Garcia Rolfo in the lead role that McConaughey played in the film. He's joined in the cast by Neve Campbell, Becky Newton, Jazz Ray Cole, Angus Sampson, and Christopher Gorham. Animal Kingdom, the final season, debuts June 19th. Operation Mincemeat, directed by John Madden and starring Colin Firth and Matthew McFadden, hits Netflix May 11th. Deaths that happened this week: Bobby Rydell, 60s teen idol and Bye Bye Birdie star, dead at 79. Ray Allen, Sopranos star and Tony winner, dead at 95. Dwayne Haskins, football player, dead at 24. And Catherine Hayes, as the world turns, soap opera star, dead at 88. So that's our show for the week, everybody.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yes, exactly. Wayne, any final thoughts today?
When I found out that Bruce Willis was dead at the end of Sixth Sense, I completely went
in my pants. It's a great video, everybody. You should watch it. I won't let my son watch it, though, even though he likes this. I haven't gotten to that point yet where I'm ready for that one. Yes. He is a huge fan of Lonely Island, though. At least I let him listen. And don't worry, I let him listen to the G-rated versions of the song. But yeah, again, as always, we appreciate all of you listening to us. It's wonderful doing these every week, and thank you for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.
Ronald Reagan, the actor.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.